Here
oh yeah,
we
oh yeah,
go.
Oh, yeah. Let's go.
What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Kickback live on the MMA Underground. We are your hosts from the Knee on Belly podcast, Nate,
John,
Brandon.
And tonight, folks, we are talking all things UFC 291 and giving our thoughts and final predictions on the card's biggest fights, and lots to talk about, to say the least. And obviously, per usual, would love for you guys to chime down in the chat as we're talking. This is live.
Yes, sir.
So join in. Let's get it going. And with that, how are we doing, boys? Friday night before UFC 291, hot day here in Central Indiana.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're watching from, but it's been a hot
You know it's
day.
hot when I don't say it first.
yeah, if I'm leading with it, it's
Yeah.
definitely hot. But man, it's gonna be a lot hotter tomorrow night, dude. I am so pumped for this fight, especially this main event. Geez, we're gonna get into it. I'm just really excited for this card. And before we dive into UFC 291, John, rate, sub, follow, let the people know.
All right, like Nate said, we do host a weekly mixed martial arts podcast called Knee on Belly Podcast. We release new episodes every Monday. We give our picks and predictions for the upcoming fights, like we will tonight, and we recap every event. We also hit all the biggest news and headlines in and around the sport of MMA, while also sprinkling in some occasional MMA themes, games, challenges, segments like that. You can check out the pod on all streaming platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We do ask that you subscribe to the pod on whatever streaming platform you prefer and give us a 5-star rating, leave us a review. Also give us a follow on socials at Knee on Belly Podcast for IG, TikTok, YouTube, things like that. Also ask that you follow the MMA Underground at the UG on all socials. Make sure you click that subscribe button, turn on the notifications so you know about not just the next time we're live, but all the other great content on the UG, including interviews and other weekly content and shows.
Nice read. You out of breath? You still in there?
Yeah.
You're about to black out for a minute.
It's a long day, dude. It's such a long day.
It's the heat.
Shout out to John, man. All the music that you're going to hear or did hear there made by our very own John. So shout out to that. He said he's going to give us some new ones for the next live chat for a little pre. So see, it benefits to show up early.
Right.
With that, boys, let us move into UFC 291. As I mentioned, so much to get to. It all goes down tomorrow night at the Delta Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. I think that's important to remember right off top, right? Because this is at altitude. How is that going to affect some of these fights, some of these fighters? But love it or hate it, I had to start out with a little fun fact about Salt Lake City, boys.
Yeah.
Can't do any pay-per-view preview without it. Did you guys know the iconic movie The Sandlot was filmed in Salt Lake City in the Rose Park, Glendale area of Salt Lake? And the original baseball field is still there to this day. Bonus fun fact, Dumb and Dumber also filmed in Salt Lake City. And I want to know, if one of those movies had to go forever, which one would you pick?
Like get rid of?
Forever.
Oh, Sandlot.
Oh, wow.
100%.
So that's what I feel a little weird that you were like that confident, ready to just
I
move
love
on from
Dumb and
Sandlot.
Dumber.
Like,
Dumb and Dumber was so great, man.
the fact that you didn't even have to think about it, that's a little concerning.
Peak
for me.
Jim Carrey, man.
All right, fair enough.
That's tough, man.
You got to pick one, John.
Can I just die?
Nope. Let us get to the fights. We are only going to be previewing the 5 main card fights, but the prelims have some really interesting matchups on them. So before we get to the main card, John, what are your 3 to see for the prelims tomorrow night?
Alrighty. So as I look at this card on the undercard, there's 3 fighters to watch out for. So to start off towards the bottom of the card, Uros Medic will be facing off against Matthew Semmelsberger. Medic is 8-1. All his wins are by finishes, and his one loss was a submission loss to Jalen Turner. I think he's someone who leaves it all in the cage and could be somebody to watch. The next person I want to mention is Gabriel Bonfim. Perfect 14-0, all 14 by finish, 11 by sub. Made a huge UFC debut in Brazil, and now is looking to make noise in the welterweight division. He's fighting Trevino Giles, who has a wealth of UFC experience, a streaky fighter who's kind of up and down.
Did you say Trevine?
Yeah, Trevin. Oh.
Trevin.
It was just an autocorrect. But he's a streaky fighter who has a lot of experience in the UFC, so it's a good measuring stick for Bonfim. And the last one for the Lonely Heart Boys out there, Derek Lewis. He's facing Marcos Rogeria de Lima. Obviously, Derek Lewis has looked like a shell of himself recently after challenging for the title. He's gone against some of the better guys in the division, and he's very close, if not already in that gatekeeper role for the top 10. So he needs to have a big performance. De Lima has won his last 5, but one thing you know about Lewis though is out of his last 7 fights, he's either been finished or done the finishing. I think all 3 of those fighters could be a good one for your parlay for not going the distance, as Medic, Bonfim, and Lewis are all 3 great finishers, with Medic and Lewis recently only losing 2 finishing.
Fair enough. 6-pack Lewis showing up to
Let's
weigh-ins.
go.
Man, I wish I knew that before I did my parlay, which we'll get to in a minute. We got our parlays at the end, don't forget. But let us start out with the most unfortunate news, boys, that we just got just a little bit ago. And that is that Michel Pereira and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson is off. And changing that graphic there at the bottom of the screen to black and white hurt a little. I'm not going to lie. Michel Pereira missed weight by 3 pounds, coming in at 174 pounds today. Wonderboy did go on his social media to explain his side of things. I won't go into the full thing because it is kind of a longer post. So I would just encourage everybody to go over to Wonderboy's IG and check it out. But essentially, given the fact that this same scenario kind of played out against Darren Till, right? We were just talking about it for Wonderboy. He lost that fight, right? Till missing weight. And at his age, right? He's 40 years old. He said he just doesn't want to take the risk. And I totally get that, right? Especially when he was already risking going back and fighting the number 15 guy to begin with. That was already a huge risk. And a guy like Michel Pereira, who's so unpredictable, right? Mm-hmm. And where he is in his career, it's going to be tough for him to reach a UFC title shot again anyways. But one loss would probably definitely close that book forever. I mean, he's kind of just playing with that line right now. Mm-hmm. So I just don't blame him for being cautious and calculated in the twilight now of his career.
And it looks like he's taking a big stand on trying to get other fighters to start telling people, hey, if you miss weight, that's on you, and now you're going to miss out on this fight. I'm not going to keep risking it for you not being as disciplined.
Yeah, I mean, as a fan, it really is kind of, I'm selfishly annoyed that he didn't take the fight, right? 'Cause it was a fight I really wanted to see. 3 pounds to me, I mean, it's more than a half a pound like you had with the Oliveira when he was fighting Gaethje, but at the same time, it's not 5, 6, 7 pounds. So I don't know. I understand the calculated piece to it as far as Thompson, but at the same time, it's his goal explicitly to get to the title. Is that something he's talked about? Okay, so I get it from that standpoint, but I don't know, man. It's just kind of 3 pounds. At the end of the day, I think it's more on Michelle, right? It's just so strange to me. Still have guys at this level of competition missing weight like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, you look at is Kevin Holland 28 or something like that. Mm-hmm. You look at a guy like him, doesn't care about rankings, made it clear, doesn't really care about titles. He's taken this fight, right? Mm-hmm. And that's great. I think we need guys like that in the UFC, but I also understand it from a guy like Wonderboy's position who, like I said, is making it very clear that he still feels like he can compete for a welterweight title at some point, and that is his aspirations. Those are his goals, and at 40 years old, boy, that time is running out. Don't blame him here for me. I get what you're saying, the 3 pound thing, but given the fact that it has happened to him in the past and he did not, come out of that matchup favorably, I do kind of get it. He did say he wants to get back in there as soon as possible. I don't think it's going to be Michelle again, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I don't know who they're going to book him against. If weight is important to him, I'd imagine he'll want to fight at 170, which means he'll need a couple weeks to recover from this cut, right, to turn around and do it again. You do have some bigger welterweight fights coming up with Luke, RDA, and then Ian Gary and Jeff Neal. So maybe he slots into one of those if somebody gets injured or falls out. But I don't know. Is there anyone you guys want to see or anybody in the chat that thinks would be a good fight next for Wonderboy?
I like JDM.
Yeah. Jack Della.
Yeah.
He does want to do that Australia card. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that would be the one. Do you think Wonderboy would fly to Australia to fight him though?
Maybe.
I don't know.
The chat, we got a couple things in the chat. First of all, sorry, Chrissy J. No John Morgan.
Yep, sorry.
Cody Merrill coming in with the we out here.
Yeah, that boy Cody, man. Coming through clutch every single week every single time we do this to get these streams set up. Appreciate you, Cody, man. Oh,
yeah. Your boy Dormans, he said, I'm okay with Wonderboy bumping a headliner for a fight night soon. Said he wants to fight ASAP, but who's available to fight? Obviously, that's what we're kind of getting at. Cody said if Holland was really a BMF, he would have called out, or he would have talked about Kiesa's mom.
Don't talk about my mom.
He said Pereira would also have been a massive weight advantage in a regular scenario. Pair it with the fact that he stopped cutting and would have been 210 probably. It would have been a huge advantage. Yeah. And then he said Ian Gary posting Wolf tickets saying that he would have got on that flight for the fight in and then he knows damn well that the commission wouldn't allow it.
That's kind of, yeah, I saw that. I did see that post from Ian Gary, and I kind of thought that same thing. I'm like, I appreciate the call out, like, you know, putting yourself out there and letting it be known. I guess you would, but like, yeah, like, kind of know, especially if you're not in, like, we have seen it before, but it's usually sometimes guys that are already in Vegas. So like, yeah, you're not going to fly in, you know, a couple hours before a fight and
I think
get that fight.
It goes back to that him kind of like mirroring the Conor thing, where Conor will just tweet about every single fighter and saying that he would fight him, is kind of along the same lines of that. But
I also haven't seen, has anybody seen who they're now going to elevate to the main card in this fight's place? You know,
No.
on Twitter, I seen somebody post that it's going to be Derek Lewis.
But see, I thought that,
because they're ranked.
Well, and that makes the most sense logically, but the UFC also likes to put guys like that on the main card of the prelims, kind of build some hype. And a big heavyweight fight like that, you know, we're looking at this fight is probably going to end in a knockout. It would make sense to get people excited for the main card. And
I've seen prelims are going to be on ABC again.
Yeah, I think so. But even like, you know, Bonfim and Giles, you know, I think that's a great card. That's a good fight that could elevate to the main card. But yeah, I think Lewis and De Lima does make this most sense, but I also think they'll want to keep that on the main card or prelims.
Cody said it's Lewis from what he's been told.
Okay. So that I mean, it makes the most sense. The biggest, you know, in terms of like just a pay-per-view, keeps the strength of the card up as well.
His source is JA, so can't beat that.
I guess it doesn't get any higher than that.
Did you see him cut the BMF promo in the press conference?
No, I didn't see it.
Oh man, it was.
Was that why I saw the whole like Mitch or the McConnell? I saw like a meme going around with like Mitch McConnell instead of John Anakin between them. Oh, dude,
it was basically.
I may be butchering the.
He was basically saying something along the lines of like, you know, if you had to look through the whole roster, who the, you know, baddest motherfuckers are, you're not gonna find anybody better than these guys. But the way he did it was just like super, super dope.
Nice.
And only way he can do it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, real unfortunate. Like I said, I this one really hurt. I was excited to see this fight, in this matchup. But the good thing, boys, is we got a couple more here that I'm really excited for too. So let us move into the one fight that we do know is on this main card and it is going to happen, and that is in the welterweight division. Number 12, Michael Chiesa taking on unranked Kevin Holland. Let us start with Chiesa, who's returning for the first time since November of 2021. He's been forced out of action as a result of the back injury he sustained lifting weights. That fight back in 2021 was a loss to Sean Brady, which means he's currently on a 2-fight losing streak in his career, having lost to Vicente Luque 1 fight before that. Before the loss, though, he was on a nice 4-fight win streak, wins over Carlos Condit, Diego Sanchez, RDA, Neil Magny, who's always a tough out no matter who he's facing. And then you have Holland, who's coming in on this fight 3-3 in his last 6. Obviously, the weird Hamzat fight. But he is coming off his 3rd-round TKO win over Santiago Ponzinibbio back in April. And quite an interesting contrast here for one guy who loves to stay active in Holland and then a guy returning from a lengthy injury in Chiesa. And for what it's worth, Holland has fought 6 times during Michael Chiesa's hiatus. So I don't know how you kind of look at that. One thing I find interesting about Chiesa in this layoff is this is the longest layoff of his career, but he's had 2 other lengthy layoffs of over 12 months. They were between the Beneil Dariush and Kevin Lee fight, which was 14 months. And he also had that return fight against and then he lost that return fight, against Kevin Lee. And then between Lee and his next fight against Anthony Pettis, there was 13 months, and he lost that return fight against Pettis as well. He did have an almost 1-year layoff in the lead up to the RDA, between the RDA and Condit fights, and he won both of those fights. And it is worth mentioning those other 2 lengthier layoffs were a lightweight, so you could factor in the weight cut. Could be nothing to that, but history does show he doesn't handle the lengthy layoffs very well when he is returning. Again, I'm not sure if there's something to that, but it was something that I was looking at in the build up to this fight.
Right.
Yeah, so I noticed that as well. Like when I kind of went back through his career, those layoffs he had and like the 1 fights per year in those areas. And I think this fight in particular is really interesting because to me, it's very much you have the striker in Kevin Holland, who's got some jiu-jitsu skills. He's got the darts win, I believe, over Tim Means. But then you got Michael Chiesa, who's just a wet blanket. Like he just likes to get a hold of guys, grapple. Yeah. And Kevin Holland just wants to kind of stand there and bang. But I think that this fight, the way I see it going down is Chiesa is just going to do exactly what he did against RDA, push him up against the cage, try to make it nasty, get him on the ground. And then Kevin Holland, I think he's got more tools to win this fight. However, I don't know. I just think I like Chiesa because I think he's the underdog in this fight. Isn't Holland the favorite?
I believe so.
I kind of like Chiesa there because I think that he has obviously Kevin Holland's takedown defense is not the greatest.
Yeah.
But Chiesa has been knocked out before. It's just been a minute. So I don't know. I like Chiesa in this fight because that's a little bit of a lonely heart pick for me. But Kevin Holland can easily get this done on the feet.
Yeah. In the chat, Cody's saying that one has to believe that Chiesa spending all that time in Vegas as an analyst means he's doing physical therapy and getting worked on at the PI. He said, but everything in me says that Holland gets it done. He handles grapplers very well and always is ready to scrap. Chiesa on the feet hasn't been great in recent performances.
Does he handle grapples? I guess it depends on the grappler.
He doesn't handle he doesn't necessarily handle the wrestling, but he's a Travis Lutter black belt, right?
Yeah.
So he's no slouch. Yeah, he's no slouch in terms of just the pure jiu-jitsu. I think in terms of defense, that's one thing I have in my notes is defensive grappling. I would say just in terms of jiu-jitsu for jiu-jitsu, right? If you factor out the wrestling, I think they're pretty on par in terms of because I just don't think Chiesa. Let me rephrase that. Chiesa definitely could sub Holland, but I think it's not going to be as easy as people might think it would be.
No, I see Holland to me has been pretty content with getting taken down, and I think Chiesa has all the ability to take him down. I don't know that Holland's jiu-jitsu off of his back is going to be enough to be really offensive. The question to me is Holland gotten better at getting up because I think Chiesa is going to be able to take him down.
Yeah, I think it's what's interesting. Cody said the altitude could play a huge factor too. When Holland gets tired, he's unable to get up.
Yeah.
In my notes, I thought it was interesting. I think the scramblers are going to be really good because if you go back to the Hamzat fight, Kevin was able to make it difficult for Hamzat to hold him and then get to that sub. He was doing those Grammys over and over. Yeah. Fought off some of the chokes pretty well. And I think that if you look at being able to go strike for strike with Wonderboy for so long. Even the Ponzinibbio after hurting himself, being able to come through that fight.
Yeah.
It becomes very interesting. I think Holland's going to be very aggressive early. Chiesa's going to need to take it down, but I just think that Holland will be able to get up enough times to land a big strike and possibly hurt him and go for a TKO or a sub. But I do think that layoff could be part of that as well.
I think what makes me a little worried is that I have this feeling that this fight's going to go to a decision, and Michael Chiesa just does not lose decisions. No. He's 7-1 in decisions. The one loss was to Sean Brady, who took him down and controlled him for large parts of that fight. Obviously, we know that's not going to be necessarily an issue here against Kevin Holland. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, the only thing in the back of my mind that worries me is the way Chiesa lost to Luque was the Darce.
Yeah.
And
fast too.
Yeah, and I just feel like Holland has a sneaky good Darce, and I just see that happening with him spamming takedowns. Is Holland prepping for that and shooting a Darce or something from front headlock? That's not my pick, but that's back of my mind, low key pick. I think that could happen.
Well, and I think that's what it comes down to. Do you think Holland can come out, land the big shot to finish Chiesa, or does Chiesa just take Holland down and control him to a decision? I think for me personally, I'm going to lean Holland here ever so slightly to get it done. I think he has to get on the front foot immediately, though. I mean, he just can't be pensive and waiting for the takedown because he's probably not going to stop it anyways if it comes, right? Being honest, I just like to see him attacking from the beginning, using his long range and reach advantage. I think he'd be wise to invest in the body as well with Chiesa early to kind of try to slow his wrestling attacks down and the legs maybe. I think his cardio is going to be pretty okay. Hold up, especially in the later rounds if he's had to work himself back to his feet, which I think even being a bigger guy, I agree with Cody with the altitude could play against him, but I think it could help him as well in the wrestling defense as well, just because he's a big guy, man.
Especially for 170, right?
Yeah, right.
85.
Absolutely. He's gonna be dangerous for Chiesa every second that this fight is on the feet and they're not connected,
And you got to remember too, with the Wonderboy fight, he made the whole "we're not going to the ground" thing, and there was times he could have done that and used his top game.
Right.
Didn't do it. Dorman saying he has Holland by decision, tough one off any parlay. Cody saying he agrees with Nate. Maybe 4 years ago it would have been easier for Chiesa, but he's kind of falling back down to earth as he ages. Yeah. And Richard Noggin says, I think Kevin catches Chiesa coming in.
Yeah, that's kind of which, I mean, I'm going to get to another fight where I think that's, but anytime you're usually coming in like that, you're putting yourself at some type of a risk, right? So I could definitely see that situation as well.
If Chiesa gets desperate on the feet to get to the takedown, it becomes a lot easier for Holland, you would think at least, to see it coming, and work whatever he's been working.
Dude, I just can't not watch that Ponzinibbio. I just watched it 5 times this week, and every time I'm like, yeah, dude, that's going to be there. I don't know. Maybe, and like I said, Chiesa could be more than capable of just grinding out. Poor Terrence McKinney, actually, you know, like his
Right.
high school wrestling coach versus new training partner. It's been
Yeah.
such an interesting dynamic for him to navigate. Who would ever think he's like one of one in terms of being in that situation, right?
Yeah.
So final pick, Brandon, who you taking?
You want last place first? Because that's John.
John, who you taking, brother?
I'm going to take Kevin Holland here. I think he gets it done.
Okay, yeah, I'll take Holland as well.
Holland for me as well. Oh, boys, here goes the next fight in the lightweight division. Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. These two are definitely cut from a similar cloth, to say the least. Couple wild cards here, and we love it. Ferguson coming into this fight on a 5-fight losing streak and returns after an almost 11-month layoff. His last fight was the 4th-round guillotine loss to Nate Diaz in September of last year. When you look at the 4 other guys he's lost to, though, it's literally the top of the division. Chandler, Oliveira, Dariush, Gaethje. And before that, he went on the crazy 12-fight win streak. His opponent, Bobby Green, coming off the no contest head clash with Jared Gordon in April. So just about 3 months ago. Before that, he was coming off back-to-back losses against Islam Makhachev and Drew Dober. He's won just 2 of his last 8 fights, obviously one of those being the no contest. But 2 guys here who may need a win to kind of stick around. And that's a bit of a shocker, I think, especially when you look at a guy like Tony Ferguson, who at one point we thought was potentially the
12 in a
stiffest
row.
competition for Khabib Nurmagomedov. I mean, it's just crazy to think that we're here today with Tony in a sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, and to me, it all goes back to the Gaethje fight. I mean, that was, I just think, the pivotal moment for Ferguson's career. Ever since that fight, man, he just has not. I know he's fought top competition since then, but I just still think that there was something that was taken out of him in that Gaethje fight that just
100%.
never returned. And I think, you know, for this fight against Bobby Green, I think we're going to see shades of that fight with Gaethje, where I think Bobby Green has all the tools to just kind of piece Tony up. But it's Tony Ferguson. If he can get back to his wrestling ways, I really feel like that's where he's kind of forgotten what got him to the dance, right? The grappling, the Imanari rolls, the kind of crazy wild grappling exchanges. If he can get back to some of that, I think we can see him having some success. And he's just a guy who's always, like he said in one of his interviews, like he feels like he's at his peak, right? So I mean, it's what do you say to that? I guess.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. You know, both of these guys love violence. One's ate a little bit more of that than the other. You know, until they don't quit until neither one of these guys are going to roll over and give this fight up. Like, they're going to be bloody probably. It's going to be nasty. Tony's obviously been on a horrible losing streak, but he's lost to guys that are very good. And you come to this spot of, is Bobby Green as good as Nate Diaz, Chandler,
Sure.
you know, all these other guys, especially because he's on a little bit of a losing streak as well.
Did you say he was 2-8 in his last
Bobby Green.
10 or wow, okay.
So
Or he's won 2 of his last 8.
yeah,
But there's also the no contest, so yeah.
And I feel like based on the Diaz fight, there was, especially with the striking, there was a little bit of like some OG El Kakui in there with some of the combos he was throwing and just trying weird stuff and kind of being comfortable again. So I'm hoping there's still a little bit of that left. Bobby's obviously had a weird run, really good boxing, really good head movement, but something tells me that there's a chance for something big, and I'm going to tell you what that is.
Okay.
Oh, here we go.
And that is Shades and Blades, baby. I think we're going to see a spinning elbow, and Shades and Blades is showing up, hunting down that bear, and getting that W, baby.
So that's your pick?
100%.
Oh, gosh. The Shades and Blades.
Shades and Blades, baby. If I had a table, I would have slammed the knife on that, but I didn't want to do that.
You look lethal. I say you leave those on for a minute.
I definitely can't see without my glasses, but
Can you even see through those?
no, these are for fighting bears only, I think.
Dude, I said yesterday I need a Blades and Shades bear hunting t-shirt. Like, that is
By far one of the best quotes ever. Like, I hope when we do Who Said That game later in the years, that gets onto
Blades
it.
and Shades.
But I have this weird feeling that Tony's going to land some weird spinning elbow or something, and he's going to have a big night randomly in Salt Lake City. So
I don't even know how to follow that, man.
good luck.
How do you even talk about fighting at this point?
Richard Noggin in the chat saying this goes to decision, and Green is going to be too slick for Tony to get. And hate to see it, but that's how I see it.
Yeah.
He did say, "Where's the blue baseball gloves?" Yeah, I know, dude. I would try to get them.
Yeah, you should have won a baseball glove.
I just had to stop. I don't even have baseball. I had to stop by and get those sunglasses. I don't have those type of sunglasses, but
Well, now you do.
Now I do. So
Yeah, you got
next time I'm in the forest, you see me and the bear, you better help the bear.
Just blades and shit.
Yeah, I kind of getting back to it.
Good luck.
That's tough to recover from, man. Yeah, I agree with what, like, you do look at those 5 guys and it's safe to assume, like, oh, Bobby Green's just not on that level. But I kind of like what Brandon was saying there is the problem is, though, in going through these last 5 fights, Tony's really taken a lot of damage, and like Brandon said, I'm on the belief and in the train or on the side of Justin Gaethje. Like, that fight just altered Tony Ferguson's career, maybe even life to some extent forever. And Bobby Green is a super durable, well-rounded guy who at this point I think may just have a little bit left in the tank. You know what I mean? I don't think Tony can really finish Green here. Maybe unless, we're looking at he takes him down, ground and pounds. Obviously he's got the sleek darces, that you don't forget how to do that kind of stuff. But I just, I don't even see how he really grinds out a decision. His out of the cage struggles have been pretty well documented. The latest incident being even very recent. So you also have to wonder there, like, where's his head? How much has he really been preparing for this fight? Me and John, we talked to jiu-jitsu yesterday, and I'm like, he's saying all the right stuff. I love everything Tony Ferguson has said, but I feel like we've kind of been here with Tony too, where he shows up to media day and he's getting you motivated, and you're like, okay, he's back, and then it just hasn't really fallen or went through. He's fallen a little short.
Well, it's almost like one of those things. How much of that is him trying to get himself into that mindset? Just trying to pump himself up. But.
And it does look like he's trained around a little bit, more this time. But yeah, I think he's still tough. He can probably hang in there for 3 rounds. But yeah, I think Green will grind out a decision. That's what
Big Ben 316. Tony Ferguson knocks Bobby senseless. Your boy Dorman. Tony by sub. I'll just keep telling myself that until it goes down.
Keep saying it.
Yeah. But what? We've also been saying a couple fighters where we feel like, even like with Duplessis and Whitaker, it's like, I don't know what he brings to this, and then he brings it all.
Sure.
So we've been wrong a couple times with a couple of these fighters. So it just depends on who shows up.
Yeah, absolutely.
My pick is Bobby Green. I think he pieces up Tony, and I think it's just my pick is Green, but I think he probably grinds out a decision or maybe even finishes him.
I love it, man. Yeah, I'm Green, and your blades and
Come on now.
there's no question where John's going there. Oh, dude.
Richard Noggins did bring up he did look good in the first round with Chandler, which is something that I was looking at too.
Yeah,
between
you mentioned that yesterday when we were talking about this.
Between that and then Diaz thing being a switch last minute 170, like there's a lot of different weird factors to that.
Was Chandler the most before Diaz?
No, Diaz is the most recent.
Yes. No, I know, but before Diaz, was it Chandler then Diaz? Yeah. So there's a little bit in there. I don't know, man. I just worry sometimes, just the damage.
The other thing was that last fight. I think in one of his interviews, he was talking about the fight with Diaz. I really wasn't even motivated. I didn't get, and I get that. The last,
the circumstances were just so weird.
But
didn't he say he was drinking Slurpees or something the week of the fight? Yeah.
Yeah, it's Tony Ferguson, man. His whole life is chaos.
And the build-up has just been as expected between these two all fight week. Just hilarious. Like I said, just 2 wild cards. But we love it just about as much as I love this co-main event, boys. Let us talk about it because there's a lot to get into here. And in the light heavyweight division, number 3, Jan Blachowicz welcomes Alex Pereira to the division. Let us start with the former light heavyweight champion Jan Blachowicz. Blachowicz is coming in off his split draw against Magomed Ankalaev. It was a close fight. I still personally felt Ankalaev did enough to win, though. I went back and watched it. I still feel that way today like I did then. But the fight, he had another weird kind of circumstance with the Alexander Rakic. Rakic injured the knee in the 3rd round. And then the fight before that, he lost his light heavyweight title to Pereira's teammate, Glover Teixeira. This fight will be Blachowicz's 40th mixed martial arts fight. And when you compare that to this being Pereira's 10th fight in the sport, that is pretty significant, I would say. But let's talk about the former middleweight champ, Alex Pereira, because he is one of the more unique contenders I think that this sport has seen in a while. Because for so little experience, he's obviously achieved a lot. He came into the UFC, won 4 straight, which culminated in the knockout of Israel Adesanya to win the middleweight title. However, just 4 months later in Poatan's last fight back in April, he lost the rematch with Izzy, getting knocked out cold in round 2. And I've seen a lot of people kind of question that, this is a quick turnaround for Pereira, given that knockout. So it is worth mentioning that. Despite being the guy coming up in weight, Pereira will still be the bigger man, having 2 inches in height, 2 inches in reach, which is significant for him. But this is a massive fight that I think has real title implications. But let us start there, because with the news of Jamal Hill relinquishing the title due to injury, I think everyone was kind of fully expecting this fight to be for the vacant title, right? I mean, it kind of made sense. I think, did we get the Jamal Hill? Was that last week?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
a week before last.
Yeah, 2 weeks maybe. So are you guys kind of surprised that we're not seeing this? Because I'll be honest, when I was working on the graphics, I had a graphic with the title in it just in case, because I genuinely thought this was going to turn into that.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it would have been awkward to, like, what do you do in that instance? Do you put it ahead of the BMF title? Like, where do you put that in the card?
There could have been some of that. I mean, I think you would have just left the BMF title, though. I mean, it's kind of yeah, because I think there's scenarios and situations where you could kind of like understand why you wouldn't take a main event away from Dustin and Justin, given the last minute nature of it. But that could have been some of it. I didn't even think really much about that.
Well, I remember in the episode, the one thing I had brought up is maybe just not wanting to go. One of them didn't want to go 5 rounds, or the pay wasn't going to add up, because when you go 5 rounds, that changes a lot of things. If this is for a title, that changes a lot of things as far as what you're training for. Yeah. So if maybe they couldn't make the money make sense, or somebody just wasn't, with Pereira, this is his first fight at 205 in the UFC. Obviously not his first fight at 205 ever in like professional combat sports, but this is a whole different thing for him, and it's coming off the knockout. There's a lot of weird things to it, but it could also be, they're telling Yuri like, hey, you're going to be fighting for the title next against this person. So it keeps the storyline there, because if Pereira was to win this fight and get the belt, it's kind of hard, especially if Izzy was to win at 293, to not do that fight like super quick and then skip Yuri. So maybe it was just some assurances there.
I think this is a bang-on #1 contender matchup at least. But just because I think that, I don't necessarily think that this will be, either of these guys are going to fight necessarily for the belt next, because kind of my tinfoil hat theory on this is the fact it isn't for the vacant title kind of does tell me that Yuri Prochazka is probably ready to go, or at least sooner than later, right? And since Yuri was guaranteed a shot on his return, they probably maybe don't want to risk one of these guys winning, but picking up an injury, not being able to do a quick turnaround to fight Yuri. So I wonder if we may see a Yuri versus Magomed situation for a vacant title. I don't know. Maybe on Fight Island or the city card. But I think they'll wait and see what happens in this fight, then kind of like make that decision, because maybe one goes, knocks the other out in 10 seconds and can turn around in 6 weeks. You know what I mean? And maybe that's what they do. But I have a feeling the reason we didn't see this become a title fight is because Yuri is maybe closer to a return, and you can't snub him, right? You can't take that title shot from him. Or maybe they see if one of these guys finishes the other quickly, can turn around and fight Izzy. Izzy needs a fight. What are we going to do with Izzy? Like, you know what I mean? But either way, it seems like they wanted this fight to play out without a title for, some specific reason. Yeah, because I'm seeing even with Izzy, man, it sounds like from at least what Strickland's putting out there on social media, which you always got to take that for what it is. But it seems like they do not want that fight, him and Strickland, Izzy and Strickland in Sydney. So
yeah, who knows at this point? There's so much like weird things that are happening with around him, just trying to get that fight or what's going on there. So, we might not be able to make it work.
Yeah.
How long has it been since Yuri injured himself?
Was it in February? No.
Was it? I thought it was been like almost 2 years.
Yeah. I'm tripping. Yeah. No, okay. I was thinking of the last time, because I was thinking like, well, because that was kind of one of my things to turn this around, because I'm like, man, we need to see this belt defended. Like, we need to get it going. But then I was like, well, I guess Jamal did just win it. I think it was in February. So I guess, I don't know when Yuri got hurt. But, I mean, that's the thing, too. Like, the injury he's coming off of, it's like, holy cow. Everything you heard about it.
Richard Noggin in the chat saying, Alex is going to catch Jan with a whipping left hook, and it's over 1 minute within 3 minutes of the first round. Your boy Dorman saying Yuri smacks both of these fools anywhere, anytime, any cage. And he says, in my opinion, Hill was told... there's a thing in the middle of the chat, sorry, was a tougher fight for Yuri than these two. Is basically, he said that Hill would be a tougher fight than Pereira and Blachowicz. But yeah, this is going to be a huge fight, man. I think that what's interesting is it's a pick'em. Like on the odds, I keep on going back and forth about it. Jan obviously has a lot of good takedowns, top pressure, doesn't make a lot of mistakes in the stand-up. Alex does get hit a lot, and we've seen he's had trouble with the right hand from Izzy. Obviously, Jan isn't as fast as him, but he sure has more power. And if he could land it, he could put Alex out. On the other hand, Pereira at 205 looked really happier in the embeddeds, not having to cut, just eating food off the grill that Glover was cooking, smiling. He seemed real focused. But as sound as I mentioned Jan is usually with the striking defense, he's only been knocked out in the UFC by one thing, and that's a left hook by Thiago Santos. And Glover, Alex's mentor, dropped him with the left hand before he choked him out. So both of these guys have knockout potential. I think Alex will have to lean on his leg kicks to help stifle some of the takedown attempts and make Jan a sitting target. Blachowicz will need to mix it up early and wear on Alex. And with the only being 3 rounds, neither of these guys can afford to start slow. So I'm still not sure who I'm taking, but if you make me pick, I'll pick right now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick Alex Pereira. I think he's gonna land something big, and I think the left hook thing is real, and the knee, man. He throws a really good up the middle knee.
Yes, the knee is something that I find very interesting, especially going back and watching some of his kickboxing fights. That like leaping, lunging knee that he has is filth, man.
Yeah, and as good as Blachowicz's takedowns can be, they're not necessarily like super technical and all angles. Sometimes it's just kind of burrowing straight forward, and he could eat something.
And that's the tough thing, because there is so much to love about Jan Blachowicz in this fight. Obviously not just with the wrestling, but the Polish power, right? I mean, he can knock. We just saw Alex knocked out, right? So we know he's got the power to do it. And despite all the sirens and alarms telling me to stay away from Pereira in this fight, I'm ignoring all the red flags. I'll be honest. I don't think it's going to be as easy for Jan to get Pereira down. I don't think it's going to be that easy for him. And I think also for him to even do that, like I was talking about earlier, I think he's going to have to, kind of what John was saying, put himself in a little danger there. And because of that, I'm also not so sure he'll be so urgent on getting the fight down either. He may want to just trust the Polish power and try to kind of go for it on the feet for a little bit. He is kind of that cloth, right? I also don't think I think there has to be something, to the fact that Pereira's main training partner, not just for this fight, but for years, was Glover Teixeira, right? And that means he's out, they've worked on the counter wrestling and all that stuff. And he'll be adapted. He'll be ready for this weight class.
Right.
He's been going with a guy, and he's been out here trying to drown this man in a stream like Poatan.
Yeah.
Glover is a national treasure. Can we keep his head above water, sir? Please.
Your boy Dorman agrees with you. He says, I lean Alex just because of the Glover relationship. Yeah. Silly, but a big help. But, who's a better, somebody who's been through everybody in the Division I, but then also specifically Jan Blachowicz.
Yeah, and distance management's going to be huge, right, for Pereira. Not getting those dangerous zones where, especially, to tie up in the clinch or be in there for the takedowns or those big bombs that Blachowicz throws. And I think his leg kicks could be huge here as well, to help slow some of that down. Then you obviously factor in the missile of a left hand. And I'm just not so concerned either about the quick turnaround from the knockout. It just doesn't concern me because he's going up in weight.
I was going to say, that's the only reason I'm not, because he's going up in weight class.
If he was cutting back down to 85, if this was a rematch with Izzy, I'd be like, yeah, Izzy all day, right? He just got knocked out, and that was like a bad knockout. But yeah, I think he gets it done, finishes Jan in round 2. I think it's got to be early.
Oh, well, I'm gonna make. I didn't say my round, but I was gonna say. I was gonna say first round knockout. I think he's gonna catch him, because I just feel like he's gonna have to start fast. Because if you look at like the Bruno Silva fight, you play around too much, you start getting tired, and now both of you are kind of slugging it out.
Yeah, that's right. I think it has to be pretty quick. Yeah, I agree.
I'll take Alex by 3rd round knockout.
Especially with that knee, man.
Let me ask you guys this. If this was a 5-round fight, would you take Alex Pereira?
Yep.
You still would?
I think he finishes Jan. I really don't think Jan's grappling is that scary. He got out-grappled by Uncle Live. He was out-grappled by Glover. I don't think his offensive grappling is that great. I just think he was able to put it on Izzy because Izzy was smaller. Alex is not smaller.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, man. But, Blachowicz has these performances where it's like, wow, there's the guy. And then there's other ones where it's like, well, the Uncle Live, where it's like, maybe he doesn't have it against these other top guys. So this will be a real telling thing for him. And then for Alex, he just has a chance to add on to one of the greatest UFC runs ever.
And I just think Alex's power is just different, man. I think as soon as Alex lands heavy, I think Jan's going to go, oh, wow.
What Izzy said was that Alex hits harder because he sits. He gets you where he wants you, then he sits, and he sits on his punches and lands them, whereas Jan will do it while he's moving. He's still strong, but it's not it's not a solid thud like what Alex throws at people.
It was a good call by you on the left hand issues with for Jan in the Santos and Glover. I didn't even really
Walked
think
right
about
into
that.
Santos's.
Yeah, so it's like, is there maybe something with that where he doesn't see those left hands coming, and this is the worst guy to fight.
Right.
if you're not seeing left hands, this is not the guy.
But I also, what Izzy said when he said he met up with Bejeda in the airport was he kind of talked to him about how he thought Jan was going to be very aggressive, but he stayed back, and it kind of messed up Izzy's game plan to counter.
Yeah.
So that's why I think Alex is going to have to be real, aggressive and kind of really go for it himself.
Yeah. But Jan's motivated, man. He did want this fight. That's important to remember. And, you just never know. You just never know. And let's, with that, move to our main event. And in the lightweight division for the BMF title, boys, number 2, Dustin Poirier versus number 3, Justin Gaethje. And we're going to start with a quote, and that is, "These are the ones, John Anik." And that was the quote DC dropped right before these two squared off back in 2018. And here we are 5 years later, boys, and that quote still rings true in this rematch because this is definitely one of those ones. And obviously that night back in April 2018, Poirier won by 4th round TKO. Since that fight, both men went 6-2 in their careers. A lot of similarities here. John, you talked about it on the pod last week, that the graphic that you saw were all similarities since they fought each other. It's crazy. The only 2 losses for both men were title fights to then champs Khabib Nurmagomedov and Charles Oliveira. Dustin's last fight was a 3rd round submission victory over Michael Chandler in November of last year, so about an 8-month layoff for him. And then Gaethje has been a little more active, coming off his majority decision win over Rafael Fiziev in March. And let us lead with the title that's being competed here for the BMF title. As we sit here on the eve of this fight, do you guys even care that this is being competed for? Like, does it add value or excitement to this fight for you as fans?
No, absolutely not.
You just don't care?
No, I don't
really
care. I just don't.
I feel like I didn't care, but now that it's here, it's kind of cool.
I think when you bring, it had Masvidal out there to do the face off and like hold the belt. I thought it was cool. I'm also, a kid wrestling fan.
Yeah.
And,
maybe that's what it is.
Getting belts and stuff, and even just having like cool name belts. It's not just, heavyweight this and this, having something like a hardcore belt.
It's like a trophy, right? Like, I feel like you almost have to look at it in the sense of it is like a trophy. Now, I think there is something like, do you have just one BMF champion? I think if there was ever a case to do Grand Prix and tournaments, this would be it. Like, do like a 6-8-man tournament. At the end, the winner gets a BMF title, but that's your ticket to be the number 1 contender. Like, I think that would be cool. Like, if you really wanted to do something with it and give it some meaning, I think that would be pretty cool.
I mean, if it was across, like, each weight class had one, I'd be a little more invested. Sure. But to me, it's just kind of one of those, we need to kind of add some emphasis to this fighter, to this card, so we're going to throw the BMF title on it. And to me, it's not enough.
But both guys, I mean, I feel like, because like I feel like ever since the Diaz Masvidal fight, the thing has always been like, well, who deserves it, of that distinguishing, and I do think these two guys, to some extent, are deserving of that title. You know what I mean? Like what it at least stands for means.
Yeah, it's interesting. They both have gotten the interim title, right? Both have never actually won the undisputed title, and then here we are, and they're going for the BMF title. So it's just, that's kind of interesting in itself too.
Right. Were you gonna say something?
Just Simon Phoenix, no John Morgan. Sorry.
Sorry, Simon.
Dorman saying, I doubt Justin wants any mat jiu-jitsu from Dustin.
I think one of the biggest storylines for me with this fight is probably the fact, to me, that it's probably the last chance for both men to get a title shot in this division, at least in this division. But I think we can all assume that the winner is probably number 1 contender for the winner of Islam and Charles. But my question is, do you guys think just winning is enough with Alexander Volkanovski potentially waiting in the wings? Or do you also think it's imperative that one of these men goes out and wins either very convincingly or impressively to avoid getting leaped by Volk? Because I feel like there's kind of, Volk is injured, but I feel like there's still this kind of like, is he going up? Is he not? So I guess, like, who would you see as the number 1 contender or think would be next?
I would say yes. There should be an emphasis on how you win this fight, right? Like, you need to finish, you need to look great, you need to stand out. You can't just grind out a decision, especially with Volk kind of hanging in the wings. And I think also, too, because these guys have both lost to Oliveira. They both fought Michael Chandler. They've both kind of gone through, a lot of this division together. Yeah. And they're in very similar spots. So if they just kind of grind out this decision, it's like, well, you both kind of had shots at this. I don't know. To me, I'd agree. I think they need to really stand out and shine in this match in order to prove because the Volk was the only person to make Islam look human. And if Oliveira gets the belt, again, it's just like, well, you both have fought, you both lost.
Both got finished.
Yeah.
Well, and you've seen both of them fight Habib and struggle with that style as well. So if you don't put on a big performance, maybe they might be a little bit pensive, like, wait a minute. Yeah. We've seen what happens when you guys face these type of wrestler guys that can control you and do things like that.
And Oliveira just went out and made a statement in his last fight. So I feel like they're on the same kind of framework where they need to do the same thing as Oliveira.
I just still feel like I want to see what happens with Aljo and Sean O'Malley, because I still think, especially if Aljo wins that fight, we have to see him and Volk before Volk goes. I know Volk said the whole, like, he'd be willing to go back and forth thing, but, like, I think Aljo and Volk would be massive, man. So I feel like if that fight's there, it definitely makes room for Dustin or Justin to be next. We don't need to rush the Volk Islam rematch. That's why even with the elbow, like for Volk, when it was like he might be able to turn around. It's like, dude, we don't need you to rush back for that. Like everybody wants to see it. It's gonna be there, but yeah, you don't need to rush back. Like just get healthy. Like let's see it when it's ready.
Well, and you also still have somebody like an Ilya there for Volkanovski that could, if they decide to do something, even if they kind of throw them together before, because who knows what happens from the Aljo. Like there's an injury changes all these guys' trajectories and potential opportunities there. Yeah. Richard Noggin in the chat saying Gaethje all day. His fight game is leveled up to the point where he's a completely different fighter. Dustin improved, but he's still the same fighter. No massive changes.
What do you think, Brandon?
I think I disagree with that. I think like you see the improvements in the last 2 Conor fights with Dustin, his ability to absorb shots, his ability to implement his boxing and his leg kicks. The last fight with Gaethje's big moments were the leg kicks. And I mean, then eventually Dustin showed that. I believe Dustin's the best boxer in the lightweight division. I still believe that. Sure, yeah. So I think that Gaethje, I don't know what improvements he's made to outbox Dustin. And he's not going to out-grapple him. So to me, Dustin still has more tools. He's still the better striker all the way around.
Well, I think the adjustment is him not brawling, picking shots, kind of not getting in these firefights like with the Fiziev fight.
I think he's still like the Fiziev. I think he still kind of brought Fiziev, because I think Fiziev's a bit more technical striker than Gaethje, but I think he got Fiziev to fight that brawling fight. Right. But then he was able to avoid the brawl himself, if that makes sense. I don't think he's going to be able to do that with Dustin.
You don't think he can pull Dustin into a brawl?
Not the way he did with Fiziev.
I mean, the first fight was kind of wild.
Well, he might be pensive to do that, considering he did get finished by him. Yeah. I mean, when somebody has that over
that's kind of my point. I feel like I just think Dustin is the bigger dog in this fight. Gaethje's a dog, but I think Dustin's just slightly the bigger dog.
What do you think, John?
I think this is going to be potential fight of the year. I mean, depending on how long it lasts. Yeah. Dustin obviously has the upper hand from winning, has more 5-round experience. Although this version of Justin is more patient, he chooses his shots a little bit better. He's more of a more dangerous than the opponent from their first fight. I thought Justin let Fiziev get started and settled more, and he should have really pushed to win. He had to push to win the fights in the later rounds. I don't know if that pacing works against Dustin. Gaethje will need to use his low kicks to slow Dustin down, make him easier to hit. Dustin will need to keep the pressure on. Although Justin has never lost by decision, Poirier's never lost a rematch. He's beat Max, Eddie, and Conor, and he has more ways to win with his jiu-jitsu and boxing. So I'm taking Dustin Poirier by, again, 4th round TKO.
I like Dustin Poirier. I'll take him by. I liked the 4th round. I'll take 3rd round TKO.
Who was it in the chat that just said a minute ago about like the improvement? They were taking Gaethje all day.
Richard Noggin.
Richard, you are a smart man. Yeah, this fight is genuinely a coin flip. I will say that, and I have flipped that coin all week. Let me say, but I am ever so slightly going to lean Gaethje here. I think when you look back at their first fight, Poirier, by far the better boxer, had a ton of success with the combinations, and he may still hold that advantage now. I'm not saying that, but I don't know how you look at that last fight for Gaethje with Fiziev and not see a guy who has made huge improvements in the striking since the last Poirier fight. He's being patient, throwing combinations, using the jab, footwork, all those things, and even throwing in a last-second takedown, right, which I don't think we'll see necessarily, but at least it does show somewhat of a willingness to go there, right? And obviously the leg kicks were a big problem for Dustin in the last fight, and I think that may be the same thing we still see here. There's still a big weapon for Justin Gaethje, and I think it's even a bigger problem now. That was a big problem. Fiziev, again, a very go back to like the Fiziev Brad Riddell fight. I told you guys, we've talked about this on the pod. I like just going back and watching that fight and just listening to it, because holy cow,
the connections,
the stuff they were throwing at each other was crazy. But so for a guy like Justin to go in and have the success that he had, to understand a guy like Fiziev, that he was able to do that. And I'm not saying that it'd be wise for Gaethje to go in and try to outbox Poirier, but I think on the night, if he can put it all together, sort of like what we saw against Fiziev, I do think he can win, and I think he can finish Dustin. So give me Gaethje by third round TKO. And for what it's worth, I'm also not someone who necessarily subscribes to the cardio advantage in this fight particular, because everybody's saying like, oh, well, Justin trains at altitude, especially with a guy as professional like Poirier. And remember, Gaethje's teammate Kamaru Usman lost his title to Leon Edwards in Salt Lake City, and though Leon seemed dead tired, right, going into that fifth round, no amount of cardio was ever going to stop that head kick. I mean, where is it?
Right.
Nothing was going to stop that head kick from knocking him out. And the same goes for this fight. If Dustin lands the right thing, he's definitely going to be able to finish Gaethje again. But I will also drop a little nugget that I found on the deep, dark interwebs of the internet. So take this with a grain of salt, because I have nothing to back this up or a source or anything to prove it. But I did read on the deep, dark web that Poirier did not work with his longtime strength and conditioning coach, Phil Daru, for this fight. And apparently that reason was because to focus on the weight cut. So I don't know if, he looked good on the scale. I thought, that was, I read that earlier last week, I think, and I was, looking, and I'm like, he looks pretty good on the scale. Could be nothing, just internet rumors, but I did see that, for what it's worth.
Yeah, well, I think what makes it difficult for me is Justin kind of got off a lot of the stuff he needed to get off to beat Dustin the last fight. He did get the leg kicks and started hurting him. The problem is, we've seen it a couple times, Dustin can hurt you by standing still. He can still throw big, heavy punches without being able to use his footwork as well or anything like that. And we've seen him implement leg kicks a la the Conor fight, to where he's starting to add that a little bit more in too. So it's going to be interesting to see who kind of folds first. Yeah. I just feel like if he can't win a boxing match against Dustin Poirier, in my opinion.
Yeah, my other thing I'm leaning on is Justin's been dropped by Oliveira. He's been dropped by Ferguson back in their fight, the second round. And so I just think Justin's a little more chinny than Dustin.
But look, I just don't know, though, when you go back and watch that, to see where Gaethje was in that first Dustin, I just don't see how you don't see the improvements. And let me ask you this. If you go back to that fight and you see how compromised the legs were for Poirier, if Gaethje shoots a takedown and lands it,
could catch a guillotine, though.
I think Dustin's jiu-jitsu is very underrated.
I don't think it's underrated. I think it's good, especially his
the guy almost
guillotine.
choked out. He had a nice one on him for a little bit.
Sure, and I don't think we're going to see a takedown. I'm not saying that, but I'm just if we are seeing a more patient, calculated Gaethje, it could be a big problem for him. But I do like that rematch. I didn't know about that Poirier's never lost a rematch.
Yeah, he's fought Max twice. He's fought Eddie Alvarez twice, which obviously the first one was a no contest for the eye poke thing. But he's fought him twice, and then he's obviously fought Conor 3 times and won the 2.
It's a first for everything. You know that, right?
There is, but numbers are there, man.
And I will say, too, I did see something, I think, where Max Holloway said that he would be willing to fight winner of this as well.
He wants that BMF belt.
Yeah, so, it's if they do go the Volk route, there's definitely a fight for one of these guys as well. So,
and that's a really good idea for him to introduce himself into really trying 55 for sure.
No, dude, couldn't agree more. With that, let us get to our parlays. And, John, we did these on Monday.
Yeah,
we did our parlays on Monday. My odds have changed drastically. So have you checked yours today? I checked mine today. Next time we do this, we're gonna have to do it day of, because my odds are better for me. Good thing I did it on Monday. Right. But let us start with John. This is his
real quick in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Taquero Man 91 asked if we're excited for the Bellator Risen 2.
Oh yeah, really bummed about the AJ McKee though. That really sucks. That fight I was really, really excited for.
I love that they do this, man.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, depending on what shakes out when some of these fighters leaving, it can make that a little bit not as exciting, because obviously Risen has a lot more of the smaller weight guys. But man, they're
who's Horiguchi's fighting?
I can't remember who he said he's fighting.
Yeah, that's because it's for the debut flyweight title, I believe. So that fight's insane as well. Horiguchi and Takashi. Yeah, I don't know if I might be butchering that. Kana Watanabe, she's crazy good. Magomedov's awesome. Danny Sabatello, that's a great fight.
Yeah.
Lorenz Larkin's on the card. Yeah, man.
Dude, we got that 291 and then Spence and Crawford.
Yeah.
Like, it's a crazy weekend.
Yeah, I love this card. Yeah, no, it's a great card. Like I said, just really bummed about the AJ McKee though. But Roberto De Souza, who Patricki's fighting now, he is the Risen champ. I believe he's still the Risen champ. So still a great high level fight as well. So yeah, I'm excited for that card.
Yeah.
John, are you ready for your parlay?
Yes, I am ready.
All right, John, you're gonna have to explain the name on this one, so go for it.
All right, it's a substitute teacher's nightmare. And I picked these names by imagining all four of these guys like in a classroom, and you're a substitute teacher, and you have to deal with, first of all, you're dealing with roll call.
Yeah.
So you get to Jan Blachowicz, but if you go back to our early episodes, before I even gave him the respect of saying his name right, he's probably calling him Jan Blachowicz.
John, say Glover's last name.
Teixeira.
Oh, he's
Come
getting
on
better.
now, boy.
If you listen to the pod, John loves a good Glover Teixeira.
Yeah. So you get Jan Blachowicz early. You're just like, oh man, this is tough. Then you're getting to like Tony Ferguson, who's got the shades on, probably a baseball. They probably have his desk pushed to the corner because he keeps on trying to umanari people who are walking by. Worst kid. Then you have Kevin Holland, who you know is going to be talking back. He's not probably even going to answer. And then Dustin Poirier, because you're going to say Poirier if you don't know how to say it in French.
John's really thought about this.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, we gotta make these fun. So, and then like I said, just how they would all interact in class. Jan probably just feels like he could beat everybody up. Thinks he's smarter. Dustin Poirier is being slick, but Kevin Holland and Tony Ferguson in a classroom together would be a substitute teacher's nightmare as well. So that's my pick.
I love it, John. That's a thought. You really.
Look, man, I'm here.
When he sent this to me on Monday, I was just like, "Geez, man, that is you've really thought about this one." And mine is pretty simple. I'm just calling it Portuguese, and that is Alex Pereira, Gabriel Bonfim, and Rogerio de Lima to win. Like I said, we did this on Monday, and when I did this parlay, it was at plus 288. That has probably significantly moved because now Rogerio is like a minus 230, it looks like. I think this was when I screenshotted today. Alex hasn't moved, but Bonfim has gotten even bigger, which Bonfim was always kind of a bigger one. But like if you feel really confidently that he's going to finish, you could get a probably better price on him there as well.
Right.
But when I did him in this parlay, it was like I almost had it at like plus 300, so I'm like, oh, sweet. And then, but like there's like an option to like follow like the current.
Right.
I'm glad I didn't click that.
Yeah, no, I'm locked in. Tony Ferguson is the only one that was an underdog in mine.
Yeah.
But like I said, shades and blades, baby.
Shades and blades.
Your boy Dorman said he's got Vergara, Bonfim, Pereira, and Jan not to go the distance. That Medic not going the distance in his fight, and that's a plus 564. And then he says he can't help himself. Lewis and Ferg at 110 or 1011. Shades and blades, baby.
I need to know, Dorman. What's your name for the Lewis Ferguson? Because I mean, there's got to be a theme for that one. Legends never die. That's what we're gonna call that.
Yeah,
one.
for sure.
I just gave him the name.
Or Shades and Bang because he likes to slang and bang.
Yeah, there you go. Shades and Bang. I like. John, put those glasses back on as we wrap this thing up, man. I want to see the Shades and Blades one more time. I mean, what a moment.
Somebody's got to do it. I'll do it.
Those look really good too. Those are like.
Do you want them?
I'll give you. I'll for sure give them to you.
I'm sure.
But I do want to plug. I did make this knife myself, like 60%. So.
Oh man, I absolutely love it. I love it. What a moment, man.
Hey,
five episodes in on these.
If you guys aren't coming to the kickback, you're missing out, my man.
But you're gonna have to top it, man. Like we're gonna need a theme.
Yeah,
like,
you set a precedence.
Now the challenge is on you guys to beat this moment.
No, dude, I feel like you're just like our Lee Corso now.
No, dude.
Yeah, you're like our Lee Corso. You're gonna be like our college.
Not everybody has this, dude.
I don't even know who that is.
Brandon's over here. Brandon's
Is he like
over
a physicist?
Yeah. Brandon's not a ball sport fan.
Yeah,
No.
not at all.
I love it. Well, if there's nothing else from the chat, man, I think we are gonna wrap it up. So if you have anything, we'll keep going as long as people want to. It doesn't even have to be about the card, anything. But as we do kind of round third here, again, just want to thank everybody for jumping in tonight. Please check out our weekly podcast right down here, the Neon Belly Podcast. Give us a follow on all socials at Neon Belly Podcast. Also, make sure you are subscribed right here on the MMA Underground YouTube. Make sure to give them a follow on all social media at the UG, baby. And make sure you are going to mixedmartialarts.com to stay up to date with all the MMA news. And that's where you'll find John Morgan.
Yeah,
So I'm sorry he wasn't here.
One day we'll bring him on, but until then, you just have John.
I kind of like it. I just feel like I feel like every episode we're like, hey, next time maybe. But
I will say, Simon Phoenix, who did ask where John Morgan was earlier, and it just wasn't a good time to kind of cut it in. Ask if we think that Hamzat is a real star, like a legitimate star fighter.
Oh,
like in the
we're
UFC.
gonna find out. I mean, we didn't even talk about the Paulo Costa, Inkram Alaskarov. Am I saying that right?
I think so.
Inkram. We'll say Inkram.
John's not the one to ask.
Yeah, John's not the one to ask. But that fight, we didn't. That was supposed to be on this card. So I will say Simon asked that, right? Man, I would say we're gonna find out because Paulo Costa is gonna be a tough fight. I feel like Paulo Costa, he just had such a weird run lately. Even being the social media troll, he's funny, right? But he's a legit fight for Hamzat. And he's big, man.
We've never seen somebody like wrestle him and take. I mean, obviously he fought Yoel, but we know Yoel doesn't necessarily use his wrestling. But this will be the first chance to see what that black belt looks like and what his, getting up off his back game looks. But he's so dangerous. Even the Rockhold fight, like that dude was just taking shots, giving them. So it's going to be good for him. But I think that we learn a lot from this. Yeah. And with Hamzat, just seeing how he looks at 85 against the top guys. We've seen him at 70
that's the thing.
against top guys, but not at 85. You've seen him a couple times at 85, but not against somebody to this level.
I think he is a star, man. Like, if that's the question, I think at this point he's kind of shown, like, people want to see him. Like, everyone's wanting to know who he's fighting next, who's he got at 85. And it's Costa, I know that, but my point is I think he is that guy that we're all clamoring to see. I mean, he just needs the opportunity to get these big fights and just continue to show that. But at this point, people are following him to the point where I think he is.
Obviously, the UFC thinks he is because his last two fights, his last couple fights have had weird, opponent switches. We're going to give you this guy, kind of giving him the best opportunities to really get up there because they believe in him. So. Yeah,
I'm excited for that fight, man. Him and Costa it's going to be crazy. Anything else before we get out here?
That's all I'm seeing right now, man.
Awesome. Yeah, the live chat kind of stalled out again on our end, I think. So last time we had it where as soon as we ended the stream, we had a bunch come in. So if you did put one in there and it's not coming through, we'll again try to fix that for next time. As far as the John Morgan thing, luckily John Morgan allows us to come on here and do this before every pay-per-view, him and Cody Mero. So we appreciate John. We appreciate Cody. Go follow both of them, John Morgan and Cody Mero.
John Morgan's at the event. So, we're doing this the night before. He's already there. Obviously, he's there for the pre-fight stuff. So
I told you guys, we might just do Bulu Polos next time. Maybe that'll be, maybe we just do. I love it.
Wait, which one's John Morgan?
Yeah. We will be back, boys, in exactly 3 weeks, August 18th, to talk UFC 292 with you guys. That card is Aljamain Sterling versus Sean O'Malley, Zhang Weili versus Amanda Limoges, and Marlon Chito Vera versus Pedro Munoz. My legs still hurt since we talked about it. Ever since that fight's been brought up, man. So make sure you come back August 18th, and until then, enjoy the fights and peace.
Peace out.